Good evening, everybody. I'm John Bard from Children's Book Insider. I'd like to welcome you to our free session for Picture Book Blueprint VIPs. We're really happy that you're with us tonight. So here's what we're going to accomplish. First, we're going to introduce to you what we're calling the Bacchus Blueprint. We'll be having more about that in just a moment. And then Laura will be here to share the top picture book writing takeaways that she got from the creation of Picture Book Blueprint. We're going to give you a sneak preview. You're going to be the very first people on earth outside of our beta testers to see our upcoming picture book writing tool, Picture Book Blueprint. We think it's a game changer, and we're going to show you tonight and see if you don't agree. And then Laura will have an Ask Me Anything session where she'll be answering lots and lots of questions all about writing picture books. So let's take a step back, though, about Picture Book Blueprint and what this is really all about. It really began with a webinar that we hosted about 2 years ago, and it was called Picture Book Blueprint. And Laura did something that was simple but pretty historic. She went back over her 30 years of critiquing and editing manuscripts and reading thousands of picture books to discover what all great picture books had in common. That was her working theory, was, is there something that great picture books have in common, and can I identify it and teach it to people? And that's exactly what she did. The webinar was a huge success. It was about an hour and a half, and she just detailed what these great picture books had in common. And you could see an example of kind of the feedback she got. Here's somebody saying, I've attended zillions of conferences and workshops, but I've never had success with writing a picture book that I could sell. Now I understand what my manuscripts were lacking. You hit the nail on the proverbial head. We got tons of feedback like that. In fact, it is probably the one and only time I've ever seen a text standing ovation. In the chat box, people were typing at the end, I'm standing and clapping. It was awesome. So it was really a great thing. And by the way, when we put together the Picture Book Blueprint VIP package, this entire webinar will be included. You're going to get this as a bonus. It's now called Picture Book Masterclass. So afterwards, we thought about this, this webinar that people loved so much. And we realized that even though we called it Picture Book Blueprint, it wasn't exactly that. It were the elements of a blueprint, but it was still just information. It wasn't really put into a way that anybody could take it and then immediately write a great story based on it. So we were left challenged here, and this was the challenge. Can we create a way of learning and implementing that could take the DNA of the greatest books ever written that Laura had identified and empower all writers to create brilliant manuscripts? And essentially, to get there, we asked ourselves three things. First, can we innovate a new way of teaching? You know, we've been teaching children's writing for 26 years, and we've taught it in a way that is similar to the way everybody else teaches writing in general, which is have a lot of information, give it to people, and sort of ask them to sort through it and figure it out, and then start writing. But we challenged that. We said, you know, there's got to be a better way of doing it. Can we innovate something that's new and different? And that was the first thing that kind of led us on. The next thing was, can we make it easy? Writing, for whatever reason, people think writing must be hard. You have to sweat blood onto the page. Is that true? Can we make it easier, but still have the, you know, kind of the full expression of the writer's craft come through? And the final thing is, can we do it so it's not just a one-time course that somebody accesses and then moves on, but rather a tool that people can use over and over and over? So that was what kind of was our guiding principles to create the Picture Book Blueprint, which we consider the ultimate picture book writing tool. And just a word, because I'm going to describe the overall concept in a minute. The Picture Book Blueprint is just the first blueprint. We are going to also have chapter book blueprint, middle grade blueprint, young adult blueprint, easy reader blueprint, and so on. Because the goal is to take a new way of learning and let people use it for the kind of book they want to write. So Picture Book Blueprint is our first, but it's hardly the last. It's the beginning of an entirely new way of teaching. It's all essentially based on some things that we believe writers want. This is, again, after 26 years of working with writers. What is it that you guys want? The first thing is expertise. You want authoritative help. You want somebody who really knows his or her stuff, because there's so much stuff out there that is contradictory, it's wrong, it's confusing, it's outdated. And so you want someone who you can trust, who you can say, okay, this person knows what she's talking about. and I'm going to listen to her. The next thing you want is clarity. Again, there's the way writing is typically taught, and your experience is probably exactly this. You get a lot of information, and you have to try to make sense of it and struggle through it. When really what you want is a clear path to follow. You want someone to say, do this, then this, then this, then this, then this, that leads you to a great manuscript. Finally, you want access to help. It's not just a one-time thing. It's great to buy a book or to get a course, but what you really want is the ability to go back to that expertise when you need it for your writing journey throughout your entire life, and know that it's always there for you. That you never have to struggle or flail or worry that you don't know what to do, because that access will always be there. And that's why we created a tool rather than a course, was to give you access to Laura's expertise whenever you needed it for the rest of your writing life. So what we created was what we call the Backus Blueprint. And I will tell you, first of all, that Laura, and for people who don't know us, Laura has been my business partner for 26 years and my wife for 24 years. And Backus is her professional name. That's what people know her as. And it's my decision. It was my call to call it the Backus Blueprint, because Laura is far too humble to have done that. She resisted it, but I convinced her, because I think that what she created here was something so special that she deserves to have her name attached to it, because it really is an entirely new way of teaching writing. So here in kind of a step-by-step nutshell is what the Backus Blueprint is. And again, this will be used not just for teaching picture books, but for teaching all genres of writing, ultimately. First, identify the specific traits, what we call the DNA, that all great books within a genre have in common. Next, break the writing and revision process down into small, easy-to-grasp steps. This is where people often get overwhelmed, where somebody will just teach something, even if it's great information, about, let's say, writing a plot, and then you're left to write a plot. But in reality, writing a plot is simply a collection of steps, small steps that lead to the plot. If you could break it down into each tiny step, suddenly it becomes much easier to understand and to implement, and that's exactly what the Backus Blueprint will do. The next thing, and this is again really where the Backus Blueprint is truly unique, incorporate what we're calling the great book's DNA into each step. So it's not simply, here's how to add conflict to your story, but here's what the greatest books ever written in this genre do to incorporate conflict, and here's how we boil that out and give it to you so that now you can use this knowledge to create conflict. This is really kind of the secret sauce to the blueprint. Next, and here's now getting into the structure of it, create short videos for each step. And again, we've broken it down to small steps. Create a video for each step with direct guidance from an expert, in the case of Picture Book Blueprint, that'll be Laura, for that specific task. And then, and again, here's again where it's I think something special that hasn't been done much before at all. Create unique interactive forms for each step that build on one another. So if we're walking you through the process of building a plot, each granular step, there's a form that Laura is walking you through where you're getting all this information down and then organizing the information the right way. Then it all works cumulatively. You take the information from one step, carry it to the next step, and you keep working through the blueprint this way until by the end you have a finished, polished manuscript. And I say polished because we actually talk about, not just talk about, but walk you through the actual revision process. So it's really a new way of doing it, and what's great about it is that it works for everyone. If you're a beginner, it works for you. If you're a professional author, it works for you. If you have no idea what you want to write, great. The blueprint will help you develop a story. If you have a story idea, great. The blueprint will confirm whether or not that story is worth moving forward and then help you build on that story. If you have an existing manuscript that keeps getting rejected, that just isn't working, no problem. You go back and run it through the blueprint. If there's a piece of an existing story that's not working, let's say, oh, the characters aren't working, you can take it and run it through the character portion of the blueprint and fix the problem, identify and fix the problem. So this is really almost like a Swiss Army knife for picture book writing. But it's more than that in that it also gives you the DNA of the greatest picture books ever written and allows you to seamlessly and easily incorporate these things into your work. something that's important to note here. This is not a formula. When we started describing this to people, for example, to our beta testers before they actually saw it and saw what it was, one of the things that we heard was, yeah, but then everyone's going to write the same story. If you're breaking it down into piece by piece, everyone's going to come out of it with the exact same story. Here's why that won't happen. Let me give you an example of the hero's journey. You might be familiar with this. This is something that Joseph Campbell coined back in the 80s. But what he did was something similar to what Laura did. He went back and looked at storytelling over thousands of years to find the motifs that kept popping up in one story after another. And what he did find was that there was what he called the hero's journey, and you might be familiar with it, where a hero goes through certain travails and trials and meets people and gets gifts and loses gifts and all sorts of things to get from the beginning of the story to the end. And he delineated that, and a lot of screenwriters were profoundly impacted by it. And you started seeing films coming out that were based around the hero's journey. And in fact, his work goes back to the 60s on this, and that's why, for example, Star Wars was certainly informed by it. But even though they all use the hero's journey as the backbone for the creation of the story, they're very different films. I mean, Toy Story and Star Wars both use the hero's journey. There's not much in common between those two films. So I guess what I want to get across here is that by using the Backus Blueprint, you will have this incredibly strong foundation, and you will be walked piece by piece through the creation of a story. But the story will be you. It will be completely unique to whatever you bring to it. It will have a firm foundation, but it will end up being very, very different from what another person who uses the Backus Blueprint comes up with. And that's really important for you to know. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who is going to share with you her biggest discoveries in creating Picture Book Blueprint.
In creating Picture Book Blueprint, I gave myself the task of mapping out the common elements of all great picture books. And what I found was that the commonalities were not so much in the details, such as the age of the main character or how long the story was, the exact word count, but rather in the way these authors approached the task of storytelling. And thinking over what I learned, I had several epiphanies that I'm going to share with you tonight. And some of these discoveries may actually go against writing advice that you have heard in the past, but they actually prove true for every book that I studied in the vast number of books that I read in putting together Picture Book Blueprint. So here's discovery number one. Okay. A story may be inspired by an idea, but it's built on the characters. So it doesn't matter what kind of story you're writing. A quiet bedtime story, an adventure story, a silly story, or a linear story that doesn't have a traditional plot. If you don't know exactly who your characters are, you absolutely can't build your idea into anything substantial. Everything that happens in the book happens because of who your main character is. And not just who he is in a superficial way. The way your character reacts to the situations in the story turn the plot in one direction or another. What your character values and wants dictates the conflict of the book. Who your character associates with will affect not only the plot, but the tension-building obstacles in the story. In Picture Book Blueprint, I take you through several different worksheets during the character development stage. We first answer a lot of questions about your protagonist, which will get you thinking about this character in ways you didn't before. But before we go on to develop the secondary characters or the setting, we first ask, what does this character want? I take you through a series of steps analyzing what your protagonist wants to accomplish during the story and also what's standing in his way. This will give you the backbone of your plot. Only then can you look at the secondary characters, because you're only going to use setting details and other characters as they directly cross paths with your protagonist's journey toward getting what he wants. If you develop your secondary characters before you have the backbone of your plot, you'll be creating characters who might not serve your story, and you'll end up either not using them or more likely, bending your plot to accommodate the characters you spent all that time creating. Even small details of setting are important. Now, we've been taught as picture book writers to leave the details of the setting up to the illustrator, and that's still about 95% true. But in all the great books I read, the authors chose one or two small, significant details of setting to include in the text. And these weren't just random details. They either affected the plot when the protagonist interacted with this setting detail, or they revealed some bit of information about the character that helped the reader understand him better. And then we think about the details of setting. So once you've got your character created, you know what he wants, you figure out what's standing in his way, you've chosen who your secondary characters are going to be, who are necessary to your book, then we think about the setting. And I already told you that. I clearly put that twice. But anyway, the point that I was going to make is the setting. Often people, when they come up with an idea, first they think about where the story is going to take place. And then they figure out who's going to inhabit this world. And what I'm telling you is the setting is not the first thing you think of. It's your character. And as you're developing your character, you will start to understand the setting that he or she lives in and what's important to the story. And that's the right order to develop those particular aspects of your book. Discovery 2. Even books without a traditional plot structure still contain the DNA of all great books. Now, I mentioned linear stories a minute ago. For those of you who aren't familiar with this term, these are books where there isn't a clear pattern of a protagonist who has a problem to solve or a goal to achieve, and then through various efforts resolves this problem. A hallmark of plots and plot-based books is that there is a rising tension as the book progresses, often from the protagonist having to overcome obstacles that appear in his path. And at the end of the story, the character is in a very different place, either physically or emotionally or mentally or all three, than he was at the beginning of the book. He's learned something and he's changed. In linear stories, the tension is much more even throughout the book. These may be told as a series of events that all have about the same emotional weight to the character. And at the end of the story, the character hasn't changed much, if at all. A lot of these books are for the younger end of the picture book market, and they might be a cumulative story, a series of events where one builds on the next, that have a joke at the end, or a cause and effect type of story that you end up right where you started, and that's what's so funny about it. And these are often very silly and humorous stories. Here are 3 linear stories that you might be familiar with. What? This is a very touchy little, goodness, I do not like this wheel. Okay. We're having technical difficulties tonight. Normally we don't have so many. Okay, but in analyzing these books and other linear stories, I realized that they still needed just about every other part of the picture book DNA to work. They still needed a well-developed main character, and that character still had a goal to achieve or a problem to solve. The secondary characters either helped him achieve this goal or stood in his way, and this created conflict. The goal or the conflict might be much quieter than in a plot-based story, but it's still there. There was still a reason for the readers to turn the page, because even though each scene had equal weight in the book, they built gradually on one another for the big payoff at the end. I always thought writing a linear story was very different from writing a book with a true plot, but they share about 95% of the same DNA. And one thing I discovered was a real revelation to me. I realized that there are 2 types of plot structures in picture books. And some of the books that I had always thought of as linear stories actually fell into the second type of plot structure. And I was excited because, as I said, after doing this for almost 30 years, I actually learned something new. And by the way, this DNA is present in rhyming stories, as well as stories told in non-traditional formats, such as those written entirely in dialogue. Okay. Discovery 3. It's good to think outside the box, as long as you don't go too far. Editors are always looking for original ideas. And I've always recommended that you not only read a lot of picture books, but in fact, you should read at least 100 picture books while you're working on your own manuscript. And that they should primarily be books from the last 15 years or so. Now, there's always a few really classic books that are timeless. On that previous slide, you saw there's a monster at the end of this book. That book's been around since the 1960s, and it still holds up. But the vast majority of books that you read should be published in the last 15, maybe 20 years at the most. This will give you a better sense of just how imaginative picture books have become. However, the best books keep one foot in originality and have one firmly inside the box of familiarity. I've read manuscripts where the characters are these made-up creatures with these silly-willy names, and they live in a fantasy world where the sky is pink and the people walk on their heads and everyone eats cake for breakfast. And the main character has some sort of problem that has absolutely nothing to do with anything a child would experience in the real world. But the authors think kids have imaginations, they'll go along with everything. The problem is that readers need to identify with your characters and relate to them. They need to care about your characters. So if your character was born completely out of some wild fantasy in your imagination, that's fine, but he or she needs a goal or a problem that a real world child can understand. That's why you see so many books featuring talking animal characters that actually live in houses and go to school and act a lot like regular kids. So you can use imagination as a jumping off point for your book, but ultimately it has to feel real and believable to the readers. Now, a terrific example of this is Beagle. I'm sorry, this is being very... Now it went... Okay. I'm clicking it. Okay. So much for the wheel. Beagle, the Unimaginary Friend by Dan Santat. Now, Beagle is literally an imaginary creature born on a magical island populated with all kinds of exotic creatures. But he has a very real wish to be imagined by a child. And what this means in a real kid kind of way is that if he's imagined by a child, he will have a best friend, he will matter, and he will belong somewhere. These are desires that real children completely understand. But if the book took place entirely on this island, kids might not be able to fully connect with Beagle. His problems would seem too removed from their own lives. So the story moves into the real world. And that's where Beagle meets the child who has imagined him. Now, at several points in Picture Book Blueprint, I ask you to examine your idea and your story and your plot and make sure these are all conveyed in a way that's understandable and relevant to your audience. This helps you make sure that even out-of-the-box ideas remain believable and relatable to the kids. Discovery 4. If an author breaks a rule, it's with intention. And the author never breaks more than one rule per book. Now, if you've been to writing conferences, you've probably heard at least one speaker say, learn the rules before you break them. And that's true. But that doesn't mean you can learn the rules and then break them all indiscriminately. And really, I don't like the term rules. There are really no rules in writing. What people are referring to here is the DNA of a great book. You need to first understand what all the necessary parts are to a great picture book story and become skilled at creating each of those parts. And it's only then can you make the choice to change one of those parts to suit your story. You notice I said make the choice. I didn't say ignore this element of the book's DNA because you don't want to take the time to learn it, or assume that the blueprint applies to everyone else's story but not yours. It's a deliberate decision on your part to tweak one aspect of the DNA because your story needs that unique twist to be told in the way that it absolutely needs to be told. But only do this with one piece of the DNA. I guarantee that if you mess too much with the DNA of great storytelling, it will be unrecognizable as a picture book, and it won't get published. Now, a terrific example of this is Some Dogs Do by Jez Alborough. Now, this is a wonderful story with a strong emotional core that resonates with young kids' sense of fairness. And it has a heartwarming ending. So what rule does it break? The protagonist, Sid, does not solve his own problem. He has help. And you've probably heard that the protagonist needs to solve his own problem. But it still works for several reasons. One is that the nature of Sid's unique problem isn't solvable in the way that he tries to solve it. And also, this book falls beautifully into the second plot pattern that I discovered, which is where the protagonist at one point changes his mind about what he wants and ends up getting something even better. Now, this book is also written in rhyme, but writing in rhyme is not a rule breaker. Writing in bad rhyme is, but why would you intentionally write in bad rhyme? I suggest you read the story to understand how Sid's problem needed to be resolved in the way that it was. It makes the story better. And it also gives us a big surprise at the end, which is an important DNA element for a picture book. Now, unfortunately, the book is out of print, and it's a bit hard to find. If your library doesn't have it, you can go on YouTube and watch a video of the book being read. I particularly like this YouTube video here. Every time I made one of these discoveries, it reinforced my absolute certainty of this idea that there's a DNA to great picture book storytelling, and it validated the steps that I created for the picture book blueprint. So here's John again, hopefully smoothly, to play you a short video that will take you inside Picture Book Blueprint, and then stick around because we'll do the Ask Me Anything session after that.
Okay. So I learned something already tonight, which is I need to put a giant sign in front of me that says, hit the record button. Did not do that. But remember it at least in time to get Laura's stuff, which is important because she's smarter than I am when it comes to this. So, again, we have the Ask Me Anything thing coming in a minute, but I'm going to open up the chat box just for a second here. And type in the chat box, and again, you can just click up near the top where it says chat. Who's ready to see the world premiere inside Picture Book Blueprint? Who's excited? Yay! That's what I love exclamation points. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, great, 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 great. Okay, so let me turn this off. There I am. And what we're going to do is we have a, it's a brief video where Laura is going to walk you through Picture Book Blueprint. And also you're going to learn a little something about writing picture books too. So let me get there. And there it is.
So here we are inside Picture Book Blueprint. This is the home page of the course, which has the table of contents. As you can see, the material is broken into several large units, each of which covers a broad area of the writing process. And within the units, you have smaller steps that break it down into one small piece of that chunk of the process. Let's take a look inside a step. Each step starts with a video where I explain what you're going to be doing in that particular step, and I often give examples from published books or other types of examples to clarify the particular piece of the DNA of a great picture book that you will be working on in this step. As you can see on the sidebar here, it very clearly tells you where you are in the blueprint, what step you just finished, and where you're going to go next. Under the video is a PDF worksheet. This is really an important part of the picture book blueprint process. This is what makes it interactive. These are all fill-in worksheets where you actually are creating your manuscript piece by piece, or refining your writing skills, working on your idea as you do it, as you go through the blueprint. Now, because you need to write out your answers on the PDFs, you need to print them out. And here, the printer icon is very clear at the top of each PDF. You just click on that and you can print it out. If you would rather download the PDF and then print it out, you can do that here. And we give you yet another option. If you would rather print out all the PDF forms at the very beginning of the blueprint, have them all in hand at once. And this is a really good option if you want to punch holes in all the PDFs and put them in a 3-ring binder, so you have like a workbook that you're going through step by step. You can do that here. In step 1 of Unit 1, how to use this blueprint in our exclusive forms, we have given you a master PDF which has 151 pages. This is every worksheet in the entire picture book blueprint that you can print out all at once here. Now, some of the steps are going to have more than one PDF. For example, in this one, Designing Your Story version 1, I have the PDF that you fill out at the beginning, and then underneath it I have one that I filled out using a published book as an example. And I do this several times throughout the blueprint using a published book as an example, and I take it through the same process in that particular step as you would be taking your material through. And the books that I use as examples are on your picture book blueprint reading list, which is in the first unit. The reading list that I give you is organized 2 different ways. First of all, I list the books in order in which they appear in all my videos, and then I list them alphabetically by author so that you can go to a library or a bookstore and find them very easily. Now, in some of the steps, what I have done on the PDF is I list instructions as to what you're going to do, and then I use a writing sample that I created to go through the same process so you can see it demonstrated on that particular PDF in that step. I do this a lot during the revision process so you can really see how taking your manuscript through these particular revision aspects will cut words and strengthen the manuscript. So if you scroll through this table of contents, you'll see that we start with the big picture. What is a picture book? Let's gather your ideas. This step 2 of Unit 1 is where you have your recommended reading list. And then I take you through laying the foundation, which is choosing the idea you're going to work on, creating your protagonist, creating the world and the supporting cast that embody that protagonist's world. And then we put it together in a very specific way that gives you the key to knowing if your idea is workable. In the next unit, Storytelling Techniques, we use the idea that you started working on and we take it through some various exercises to work on your point of view, your tense, your tone, dialogue, show don't tell, all very important aspects of the writing process. Then we start designing your story. We start laying out your plot line, figuring out what kind of plot you're working on, brainstorming what's going to happen in the middle of the book. Then we start actually building it. You write your opening sentences and your full first draft. Up until this point, I have you working in longhand on all the worksheets because writing with a pen or a pencil on paper accesses a different part of your brain than you would be using if you were typing on a computer. But after you have your first draft written, I show you how to format your manuscript properly for submission to editors and agents, and you will type your manuscript. And this typed manuscript is what you will be working on then throughout the revision process. And the revision process has many steps to it because it's a very, very important part of the writing process. And I even have you write your second draft and then check your page turns and make sure your story has that page turn anticipation that all great picture books have. And then I walk you through getting outside input and feedback on your work. Then we have some troubleshooting. What if your writing doesn't sing? What if your story just isn't working? And I give you some ideas of things you can do to work through those issues. And finally, I leave you with some advice and parting words for your journey. You'll also notice in some of the units there are bonus videos. These are broad topics that were related to that particular unit but didn't necessarily fall into one of the steps, but they are information that I felt you needed to have. So there are several bonus videos throughout this blueprint that cover either more advanced writing topics or go more in depth into some aspect of the writing process that you are working on at that particular point in the blueprint. So as you can see, Picture Book Blueprint is very clear. It's very straightforward. It's a very linear, logical path from idea through finished, revised manuscript. This gives you the information you need, and there is no way you can get lost in Picture Book Blueprint.
Excellent, excellent. So, again, this is the purpose of this is to give you everything that we talked about. Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm just enjoying seeing this. Everything that I talked about in terms of what we think writers really need, and putting it in one place, and something that that you can. I see you, Max. I'm going to answer you in a second. Something that you can access whenever you want. Max asked if the final product is better produced than this webinar. Yeah, yeah. The final product was not created at the end of a very, very long day. But on the other hand, this is free. You get what you pay for sometimes, technically speaking. But no, it's actually very, very simple to use and very nicely designed. I think you're really going to like it. So with that, let's do some thank you. Let's do some Ask Me Anything. And I'm going to bring Laura back in here. And let me put on the slides here again, because that's what we use. You can also tell we teach people how to write children's books. We don't take ourselves that seriously. We try to have fun wherever we can. So we're having some fun now. Okay, Ask Me Anything. What we're going to do here for this is we're not going to use the chat box for this. We're going to use the Q&A function. So click on the Q&A thing. And you know what? The chat seems, it's, again, we'll just be informal. We'll just use the chat room for this. So I'm going to bring Laura in here in a minute, and she is going to answer any questions you want about writing picture books. I know the first one you might have is, when is Picture Book Blueprint available and how much is it going to cost? It's going to be available to the world at large in August. You guys, because you're on our VIP list, will get first crack at it in on July 20th. And we are putting together a special price for you guys that's going to be $50 less than everybody else pays, and a big bonus package. And when I described this to some other folks in kind of more entrepreneurial-minded folks, they were saying, well, how much are you going to charge for, like $997, $1,200? because that's, if this was like a marketing kind of thing, that's exactly what it would be. It's going to be nothing like that. I mean, it's going to be very, very reasonable. You're going to love the price. And again, we're going to give you a discount. And the key thing also is that you are going to be able to use it over and over and over. It's a tool. It's not a course. You could use it once as a course, but then you're going to be using it over and over. So I think you're really going to be thrilled at how inexpensive it's going to be, and you're going to love all the bonuses. So with that in mind, and you know what, there's some questions here about Blueprint, but I'm just going to let Laura answer them.
Okay.
So let me turn the...
Why was the window not there with the video? Okay, here I am. Okay, so let me look at some of these questions. I didn't quite get whether this blueprint produces an outline before I write the drafts. Can you clarify? It does produce kind of an outline, yes. It's not a traditional outline. It's outlined in a slightly different way, but by the end of Unit 2, you will have a sentence that gives you the backbone of your plot, and then we elaborate on that in Unit 3 and build on that. And so it does have a type of outline, but you're sort of writing as you're creating it. So it's a little different than what you might be used to. Now I noticed someone asked about, let's see, let me scroll up here. You guys have questions are coming here. I'm working on a picture book and a middle grade. Is this applicable to middle grade, or do I have to wait for the middle grade blueprint? The blueprints for the longer types of children's books, for example, we've got someone working right now on chapter book blueprint for us. A published author is doing it for us. She's doing a wonderful job. Are using the foundation that I created in picture book blueprint, but adapting it to the longer format. And of course, when you have chapters, when you have longer novels for older readers, you're going to have subplots. You're going to have a lot of things that don't appear in a picture book. So if you really want to have a blueprint that works for middle grade, you should wait for the middle grade blueprint. However, you will learn things in picture book blueprint that you can apply to your middle grade manuscript that you're currently working on that might still give you some insight into what you might be having trouble with, and at least help you get started in that respect before the middle grade blueprint comes out. Writing longhand is not possible for me. Am I able to complete the initial worksheets on the computer? No, unfortunately, we do not have, the worksheets are not fill-in on the computer. There's a lot of technical reasons for that. We wanted to make it everybody able to use them the same way, and you know, it would have been a lot more expensive for us to provide fill-in worksheets. So, but what you can do, if you are not able to work longhand, what I would suggest you do is print out the worksheet, and then whenever I ask you a question on the initial worksheets that you're supposed to write longhand, just type them on a document on your computer so that you will have that information, and if you want to print that out, you can have it side by side with your worksheet. And then, as I said, when you get into the first draft, you're going to be typing the whole thing out anyway. So that is a way you could kind of work around that if you have to. If at all possible to write longhand, it really does help with the creative process. You really do access a different part of your creativity, and it will prevent you from trying to edit everything you write as soon as you write it down. It will force you to just keep writing, which is what we want in the early stages of the book creation. Okay. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I keep hitting the wrong button here. I promise you Blueprint is way better produced than this webinar. We're also working with new webinar technology right now that we just got, so that's part of all of this. Okay.
And we're knuckleheads when it comes to technology.
Yes. Approximately how many videos total? I believe there were 37. I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but I think 37 is a pretty good estimate of how many total videos there are in the blueprint. Not all of them have worksheets attached. Some of those are bonus videos where I just talk in depth on a certain topic and I give you examples from published books within the video and that sort of thing. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I attended a picture book conference and was told one of my books was not quite right because the main character did not solve their own problem. The agent said, oh no, the protagonist has to solve his own problem. Good to hear, not all books need to be that way. Yes, it is good to hear. Now the exception, you know, it's harder to sell a story that breaks a rule. And so that's why I made that point, that it has to be only because you absolutely have to break the rule to serve your story best, and only pick one rule to break. If you do everything else really, really well, that one broken rule isn't going to matter so much. Starting from scratch, how long do you think it would take to have a completed book? That's really up to you. I imagine if you have an idea that is right off the bat working and is a good idea for a book, and you sit down and go through these steps one by one, and say you spend a couple hours or an hour a day at it, you probably will have a good first draft after a couple weeks. That doesn't mean you'll have a finished book after a couple weeks. The revision process might take you quite a while, because often I'll have you go through one step of the process and then I'll say, okay, answer these questions. If you can't answer all of these questions with a yes, you're going to have to go back to your character development worksheet and see where you have to change your main character to get it to work at this point. And that might require you revising an awful lot in between. So it depends. It very much depends on you and on your story. And just because it takes you a long time doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It doesn't mean you're not doing this. It just means you might have a more complex idea than you originally thought you had. And it takes more work to get it to be developed properly for a picture book. I had something else I was going to say, and it'll come right back to me, I'm sure. So, but the amount of time, I wouldn't give yourself a time limit here. I would definitely let it unfold as it needs to. And I also recommend, after writing your first draft, to put it aside for a while before you go into the revision process, because you will then be able to read it with fresh eyes, and you'll see things that you wouldn't have seen if you jumped right into the revision process after finishing that first draft. Thank you, Evelyn. Evelyn says, the layout of the course reminds me of your social media catch-up, which is fabulously done. So thank you. I can't wait. Is it possible to download the videos to watch offline? Yes. Yes. So that's good. Okay. Need to check out that book, Some Dogs Do. Yes, you do. It will warm your heart. Will we get an email when the program is available to us on July 20th? Yes. In fact, John's going to talk after this Q&A session. He's going to tell you what all's coming up in the next week or so that you can expect from us, because you're on this VIP list. You've got some more goodies coming. So he'll talk about that. But yes, you will get emails to let you know when it's available. Could I get the reading list before the blueprint is out? I'm just starting. Sorry, you're going to have to wait till July 20th. But
that was an evil laugh.
That was an evil laugh. I'm sorry. But check out some of the books I mentioned in this video to get you started for sure. Will there be someone available to answer questions and help during the course?
Yeah, well, what we're going to do is create a private Facebook group for all the people who buy the course and who are participating in the blueprint. And we'll be checking in there as best we can. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. Mary gave this comment, which is very helpful. If you have the complete Adobe program, you can open up a PDF in there and type on it. I I personally don't know if that's correct, but try it out.
I think you might be onto something. I think there are solutions, and we could do a little research too.
Yes.
There are solutions to allow you to make PDFs editable. So
I don't know if we have to create them a certain way to do
yeah,
that.
we'll look into that. You know,
Yeah.
we're always about, you know, going the extra mile for our people.
Sure.
So we'll see what we can do.
We will definitely look into that. Will the blueprint work with nonfiction picture books as well? Some nonfiction picture books. If you have a narrative nonfiction picture book, if you are writing a biography, if you are writing about an event that happened, a true event, and it has sort of a plot arc to it, and you're focusing on one person during that event as a main character, yes, you can use a lot of the elements of Picture Book Blueprint with that type of nonfiction. And it will help you certainly see how to structure that nonfiction how you tell the event in a way that has a good arc to it. More, you know, science-based nonfiction where it's, you know, more fact-based, where you're giving science facts about an animal or, you know, that kind of thing, doesn't quite fit into the Picture Book Blueprint. Though, again, there are aspects of the writing process that I go through as far as show, don't tell, and cutting words and that sort of thing that would certainly be useful for any kind of book. Okay. Okay. Someone here asked if they could ask a question that is not about Blueprint. Yes, you can, especially if it's writing related. If it's completely off the subject, I might save it to the end, but feel free to ask anything you want. I like your necklace. Thank you. Can people who purchase the Blueprint be in touch with each other? Again, on the Facebook group, you certainly can, and I encourage you to do that because you will be your own best networking and support system. And you can certainly give each other advice. You can offer to critique each other's work, all sorts of things. This is a great way to hook up with other people who are writing picture books, and now you'll all be sharing the same language. You will be working through the same steps. You can refer to things in the same way. So absolutely communicate with each other. Does this apply to historical fiction? Again, yes. If it's a fiction-based picture book that takes place in the past, absolutely. And when you work on the setting of your book and the details of setting that are important to add to the text, you will be including some little bits of historical detail that help ground the text in that time period. And then the illustrator will fill in the broad strokes of what the setting looked like. Well, here we go. From Short. My story is being published in the spring of 2018 and my protagonist doesn't solve his own problem. I've been validated once again. That doesn't mean you should all do that, but obviously you did it the right way, so good. Mem Fox took 2 years to write The Green Sheep, and there are 190 words. Yes, and she also took about the same amount of time to write Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge, which is one of the books I use as an example. And that has about 600 words in it. And that, in my opinion, is one of the most perfectly plotted picture books out there. So Mem Fox is definitely a master.
There's a great Mem Fox quote which says, writing a picture book is like having to write War and Peace in 500 words.
Yes. She's awesome. Okay.
And folks, remember, you could ask anything about picture book writing. It does not have to be about Blueprint. You have access to really an expert here, so come up with anything you want.
Okay. Okay, in general, is it acceptable to write a story where animals and humans in the book understand each other when talking? It's always been one of my pet peeves when that happens in a book, because I feel it breaks the rule of the fantasy world that the author has created. If you have a world where animals are talking, that is a fantasy. And that world works as long as it follows a set of logical rules that remain consistent. And if suddenly you have a human walk in and start carrying on a conversation with the animal, it breaks a rule. However, if your book is about an animal who can talk to humans or a human who can talk to animals, then you're okay. So it depends on the story. But if you're going to have something like that happen in your book where it's going to pull the reader out of that suspension of disbelief that you create at the beginning of your book with a talking animal, you have to have a really good reason for doing it. It has to serve your story. I always tell people when they have a book like that, try it without the humans and the animals communicating. Now, often I see this in a book that features a dog. And the dog understands human speech. But the dog in every other aspect is acting like a regular dog. Now, our dogs pick up cues from us. Through our body language, they learn certain words mean certain things. If you say treat, they know they're going to get a treat. If you say walk, and I have to be careful because my dog's laying right at my feet here, they might get all excited. That doesn't mean they understand everything we say. It means they understand certain cues that we have taught them. And if you can have your dog act like a real dog and still pick up on those cues from the humans, you've stayed within the real world. And within that, I always feel if you have a dog acting like that, then you can have that dog speak to other animals in the book, to the cat, and it doesn't break that suspension of disbelief, because within the animal world, kids believe that animals can talk to each other. So again, be careful how far you want to stretch those rules. Let's see, looks like some people are connecting here. That's awesome. I see Jennifer here is asking about looking for help finding illustrators for a book that she's going to self-publish. We are putting together a webinar in a couple months on that topic, so stay tuned. Picture Book Blueprint is very much about the writing aspect, but we realize a lot of you are planning on self-publishing and will want to look for an illustrator, and we are going to have something coming up within the next couple months that's really going to help you with that. So hang on. And
we're also going to be doing a webinar at some point in the near future with Julie Headland about submitting your picture book.
Submissions.
So we got you covered from beginning to end. Don't worry about it.
That's right, but you got to write the story first. So
that is it. First things first.
Yeah, we're taking you through step by step. Okay, thoughts on word count for picture books? Yeah, that's an interesting question, because there's been a lot of buzz in the past couple years about picture books having to be 500 words or less. And if any of you attended our Picture Book Summit online writing conference last fall, that is a question that we posed to the editors in our editor panel that we had. And every single editor said, I never look at the word count when I get a manuscript. So it's a tough one. Picture books are trending shorter, but I think they're going to go back to being longer pretty soon. The pendulum always swings. That doesn't mean you can write a 3,000 word picture book. On average, you want to keep your picture book under 1,000 words and probably under 800 words if possible. Now, some stories require a few more words because, for example, historical fiction or a picture book biography might have more information in it that you have to put into the book. And it's geared toward the older end of the picture book audience anyway, so you can get away with a few more words. But you're working with 32 pages, and there is an illustration that takes up quite a bit of space on every page. If you have 3,000 words, your text is going to cover a full page of that book as you're turning the pages, and it's just too much. Plus, you're dealing with a young audience who has a shorter attention span, they can't comprehend as complex a plot as an older child. So you do want to keep it short, but it's not as vital as we thought to stay under 500 words. Okay, this is an interesting question. I'm going to a conference in a couple of weeks and paid for time to pitch to an agent accepting new writers and picture books. I have 4 completed books, but I'm wondering if I should only pitch 1. Yes, because chances are you're going to have 10 minutes with that agent, maybe 15 at the max. I would take the one that you feel is your best book and come up with a really great pitch, 2 or 3 sentences that encapsulates the essence of this story and what's unique about it. Chances are the agent is either going to then start a conversation about this idea needs refining, here's how it needs to be refined, or that agent might say, that's awesome, I love it, send it to me, and then you've got 8 more minutes. So at that point you can go, great, just so you know, I have 3 other manuscripts. Would you like to hear about them as well? Agents are looking for authors who are prolific, not who don't just have 1 book in them, but they always need to start with 1 book. So start with your best and then play it by ear. Have the pitch ready for the others, but assume you're only going to do 1. Do any of the videos duplicate those already available on the site? No. All of Picture Book Blueprint is completely new content. I tried to publish without an agent, at least 60 rejections. Any comment? Probably your manuscript has some flaws in it, and the Picture Book Blueprint will help you figure out what those are. It's not uncommon to have to submit to 15, 20 agents before you find one who really loves your story, but 60 is a lot. And I admire you for sticking in there and not giving up. That's awesome. But clearly there's something in the manuscript that's not working, and it might be not working for today's kids. It might be that your character just isn't quite right. It might be that the plot doesn't evolve in a way that works for a picture book. Picture books are a very unique kind of storytelling, and the way plots unfold is different from any other kind of book. So I imagine if you run this manuscript through Picture Book Blueprint, you'll get some answers. Okay. Will your course also include what to do with your book once you're finished? Picture Book Blueprint is just about the writing. And then, as John said, we're working on a webinar on submissions, which will be available within the next few months. And a lot of these, can I tell them about Power Tools?
Sure.
Okay. Another great aspect. Okay, Picture Book Blueprint is housed on this brand new site we have called writingblueprints.com. And all of our blueprints will be on one site. And so when you log into Picture Book Blueprint, you'll be able to see the other products available and decide if you want to purchase those as well. And you might not be ready for some of them now, but you might be ready for them 6 months from now. We are going to have something on submissions on writingblueprints.com, and we have shorter programs called Power Tools, which are not a full blueprint, but they might be an hour webinar that is recorded and then housed on writingblueprints.com that you can purchase if you didn't attend the original webinar, that goes into how to submit your manuscript. The illustrators webinar that we do will probably end up being a power tool. So keep checking back the writingblueprints.com site, and we will be constantly adding new material because we want to cover you through every aspect of your writing journey, from coming up with your idea to getting your book published to marketing it and then moving on to your next book. Whether it's a middle grade or a young adult or chapter book, we're going to have you eventually covered in every way. Just give us a little time. Does Blueprint address illustration notes? Yes. I've always been confused about making notes in the manuscript for the illustrator. Yes, I address illustration notes, and I also explain how, as a writer, you should also create a dummy of your book. And I explained to you how to do that. It's toward the end of the revision process, where you actually place your text on separate pages, and then you read it as you turn those pages, just like you're reading a book, to check the pacing. And at that point, you can, for yourself, imagine what each illustration might look like. And you might realize then, oh, there's no way the illustrator is going to know on this page that this particular thing has to happen in the picture for the plot to make sense. And then you'll know, I need to put an illustration note in my manuscript right there. And there will be other parts where you realize, I'm describing an illustration on this page and I don't need to do that because the illustrator is going to figure that out all on his or her own, and you'll be able to take those words out of your text. So during the dummy phase is when you really get a sense of whether you need illustration notes, how many you need. You always want to use as few as possible to give the illustrator as much room to be creative and to add to your story. But sometimes you need to put a few in. So I do talk about that. Does this apply to higher level picture books with more text? Yes, you would use this same technique for any length of manuscript that you are writing. And what's interesting, some of you, if you're CBI subscribers, in this month's issue, I have an interview with Coral Stone Press, which is producing what they call long-form narrative picture storybooks. And these are books that look just like picture books on the inside, but they might be 100 pages long. They are bringing back a very old form of storytelling, and they are looking for submissions. If you think you have a long-form narrative picture book, you still want to run it through the blueprint. You still want it to follow this same plot arc. You still want to do all the character development, all the show, don't tell, everything I talk about in Picture Book Blueprint with the longer picture book. And I would caution you, if you see that article and you go, great, I've got a 2,500 word picture book, now I know where to send it. Make sure your story needs to be that long. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time there's excess stuff in there that shouldn't be in the book. So that's a new emerging market. Probably a great way to learn about it is to get their first book, which is called The Good Dog, and read it and see why it's as long as it is and how it is still considered a picture book. But it's a new market for you, so that's very exciting. Okay. So many people are talking about agents and publishers. I intend to self-publish my picture book. Anything wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that at all. We have a picture ebook mastery course where we teach you how to create a illustrated Kindle picture book. And a lot of people choose that option. We are working, this won't be till next year, till probably early 2017, but we have someone creating an actual self-publishing blueprint for us to take you through the process of creating a physical self-published book. So a lot of authors are choosing that route, and there's nothing wrong with that. I would strongly recommend that you spend money on the design and the illustrations, because that's really going to make a big difference. Picture books are often judged in the stores by the illustrations. And if your book has very amateurish illustrations and it's sitting next to a book that's done by a professional illustrator, no one's even going to open up your book and read the first page. They're going to go, eh, that's self-published, I'm moving on to this one. So be prepared to spend a little money in that, but absolutely, it is a great opportunity. Will Blueprint address proper formatting of manuscripts for submissions? Yes. In the first step of unit, I believe it's unit 4, I can't remember off the top of my head, where you're about to write your first draft, the first thing I do is tell you how to format your manuscript. I show you an example right on the video. I tell you the recommended font type, size, and how big the margin should be, all of that stuff. So you will know how to format it for submissions. It's not that difficult. Have any of the beta testers yet been offered contracts or on stories they've created? Well, they've only had the blueprint for about a month, so it's a little soon for that. I'm hoping that they do, but it can take a while, and it is even though it seems like you will write your story faster with Blueprint, it is not uncommon to take at least a good 3 to 6 months to come up with a good picture book manuscript, because it needs to sit, and then you need to go back, and then you get feedback on it. And there is a step in Picture Book Blueprint where I tell you how to get feedback on your work through critique partners, parents who have children, teachers, librarians, and you want to take the time to do that, because I don't care how good a writer you are, you cannot, there comes a point where you can no longer see the flaws in your own work, and someone else has to read it. So,
and that's why we make a point of calling this a tool, because even if you go through Picture Book Blueprint and people start telling you, it's great, but I don't see the conflict, you can go back to the conflict section of Picture Book Blueprint and run it through again and see what you missed and strengthen it. So it doesn't have to always be taken as a whole meal. You can pick out little pieces of it and just work on specific aspects where you feel your story is weak. So Laura's right. You're going to go through it, develop the story, have a second draft, get feedback, and then come back to the blueprint and just tighten up the areas that are being pointed out to you as potential weak spots.
Absolutely. Sharon points out maybe nonfiction could be more like linear structure. Need a reason to turn each page and then a payoff at the end. Yes, absolutely. That could be a great structure for a nonfiction book. So definitely consider that. And just like with any kind of writing, go read a bunch of nonfiction picture books if that's what you want to write. And you will start to be able to pick out, okay, this is written more like a linear story. This one clearly has a type of a plot because it's biography. And then you look at what did the author choose to include. In a picture book biography, for example, you're probably not going to talk about the subject's entire life. You're going to talk about one little aspect of it and probably something from that person's childhood, because just like fiction, it has to be relevant to the readers. So reading published books will teach you all of those things with nonfiction as well as fiction.
Laura, let me give you a 5-minute warning here.
Okay.
We don't want to keep people out too late, so we'll ask your question another 5 minutes or so, and then I'll give you a very brief wrap-up on what's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Mary asks, can you give a picture book example where 1 or 2 details of setting were provided by the author? Thanks. Actually, I'll give you one from Picture Book Blueprint. In Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but a lot of you may have read it already. There is one point in the book where Wilfred, the main character, goes into a hen house, goes into the hen house and takes a fresh warm egg from under a hen. Nowhere else in the book has Mem Fox mentioned that Wilfred has chickens, that he lives in a rural setting, anything like that. But he needed to be able to get a warm egg during a part of the book in order to move the plot forward. That egg was important. That's the only time that chicken was mentioned. But Mem Fox had to have that detail in her head when she started writing the book, so when she got to Wilfred needing something warm in this part of the story, he could get a warm egg. So again, as the setting was important when the character needed to interact with it. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to.
And by the way, we'll save all of these questions.
Yes.
So the ones that we haven't had time to, we'll still look them over. And if Laura has anything she wants to add on this stuff, we'll maybe do an email answer kind of thing over the next couple of weeks. So even if we didn't get to your question tonight, we are saving them, and
yes,
we'll be looking at all of them.
Yes, and I'm trying to, since we're running out of time, pick questions that are sort of broad that might apply to a lot of people here. This is an interesting one from Sheila. Have you noticed more of a nod to grandparents and other non-parent adults or non-traditional families in current picture books? Absolutely. And that gets into how you develop your supporting cast and your character's world. Publishers are absolutely looking for more diversity in the picture books in every way, not just in the main characters, but in their family structures, where they live, all that sort of thing. So having one of your secondary characters be a grandparent who's living with the kid's family, if it works for your story, great, use it. Maybe the parent is a single parent, and if that serves the story and it doesn't take the story in a different direction, but it's just an interesting detail in your protagonist's world, put it in. Or it could be part of the main plot if that's important. So yes, you have a lot of leeway with family structures. There are so many really bad picture books out there that have no real story but seem to rely on beautiful illustrations as their selling point. Have you observed this? Yes, I have. And the problem is that a lot of beginning writers read those books and go, well, I can write that. Very often those books, not always, but often are a vehicle for the illustrator. The publisher has this really wonderful illustrator in their stable of illustrators, and they want to give them a project. So it might not be necessarily a bad book, but it doesn't have a really compelling plot. It's clearly just there for the pictures. It's good that you start noticing those. Do not, though, use those as mentor texts for yourself. As a first-time author, you have to deliver a great story. I'll answer one more question here, and then John is going to step in here at the end. I've developed a character and plot based on my character's traits, but I'm stuck. Is that most likely because my character is not as well fleshed out as I thought? Will Picture Book Blueprint help with this? Yes. There's a couple possibilities here. Either the character's not as well fleshed out as you thought, or what the character wants isn't something that is workable in the picture book format. A lot of times, authors give their characters goals or problems that are very internal. And in a picture book, everything has to be demonstrated outside of the character because it has to be illustrated. So if you have a character and his main problem is he's feeling a lack of self-confidence, you can't really see that. That happens inside their head. But if you have a character whose problem is, I really want to go join the kids next door when they're playing, but I'm afraid to. That's something we can see in action. Your character can take active steps to trying to overcome that and go join the game next door. And when they go join that game, the reader goes, okay, now they feel confident. So chances are you might have one of those problems in your character development and in the development of their problem. So Picture Book Blueprint will definitely help you sort that out. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to slide back in here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let me just move this ahead now and tell you what is going to be coming up the rest of this month for you guys who are our Picture Book VIPs. Laura has a 3-part video series which she's put together that is, again, just for you guys. And we will be sending that out. That will be the 18th, 19th, and 20th. You'll be getting emails from us saying the next video is done, and with a lot more stuff like we've gotten tonight. Just great information. I think one of the things that we wanted to do for you tonight was really demonstrate, in case you don't know much about Laura, exactly how much of an expert she really is on the subject of picture books. I think she's just as good as it gets, and there's no one better to guide you through with Picture Book Blueprint. So anyway, she has a 3-part video series that's coming up. You will be getting that. Then on July 20th, we're going to do another free webinar for you. And in this one, Laura is actually going to do part of the Blueprint live. She's going to be taking some of the segments from the Blueprint. We're going to be creating a little PDF for you to get in advance so you can print it out with those forms. And you are actually going to experience it live for yourself. So you can really see how powerful it is. So that's going to be really cool. And we'll let you know about that. But that is the evening of July 20th. And that is also going to be marking the launch for the VIP sale. We are not, the rest of the world will not know about Picture Book Blueprint until sometime in August. So this is just for you guys. We're going to have the sale will begin. We're going to get the Facebook group up and running for you. we're going to give you a big savings and put together a package of great bonuses, including the original Picture Book Blueprint webinar. You're going to be getting that, which has been retitled something else for us because everybody else otherwise will get confused. Exactly, Picture Book Masterclass. So before we go, I'm looking at the chat box, and just type in there if you enjoyed our time together tonight. We had a nice informal, fun time together. Informal being the key operative word there. But let me know if you enjoyed it, because we certainly had fun, as you can tell. And that you're looking forward to Picture Book Blueprint, because we have an exciting couple of weeks ahead for you. Oh, it's great. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to be putting together the recording of this, and we will make sure that we put the video walkthrough in there nice, crisp, and clear so you can see it all. And we will be hearing probably tomorrow from us with that. And then I said, keep an eye out for more emails. Patricia enjoyed it, wants to buy it now, but you have to wait, sob. It's going to be worth the wait. Trust me, it's worth the wait. So you'll be getting some more emails from us. Then we'll tell you about the video series, and then mark your calendar for the evening of July 20th when we get back together and actually do part of the Blueprint Live with Laura, and be ready and start saving your pennies. You don't have to save too many pennies. I'm telling you, it's not going to be like $500. It's going to be very reasonable. It's going to be easy for you to deal with. And again, it's a tool. You'll have lifetime access. By the way, this is not a limited time. Lifetime access to this and all the bonuses, so you can use it throughout your entire writing career. One other quick thing that somebody mentioned to us, because they asked, can I use this to work with a young writer? If you have a child or a teenager who wants to write, can you use this? And the answer is absolutely. You can invite them and work on it together. You have our permission to share it with a young writer. We want to really help young writers out there. So absolutely, the answer is to that. So I believe that's it. Thank you all for being with us tonight. We had a great time, and we'll be talking to you again really soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.